The verdict echoed through the crystalline halls of the Galactic Council. Exile. Dominic stood in the prisoner's dock, his human frame dwarfed by the towering alien delegates who had sealed his fate. 50 years in the Void Sector, punishment reserved for those deemed too dangerous to kill but too valuable to execute. Outright, the human has committed treason against the Confederation, the High Arbiter declared, its three heads speaking in unison. He will spend the remainder of his natural life in isolation. Dominic said nothing. What was there to say? He'd known the risks when he'd exposed the Council's illegal weapons program. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic stage, barely tolerated, and whistleblowers were never celebrated, they were eliminated. The transport ship was cold, automated, and utterly silent. As Dominic watched the stars streak past the viewport, a reckless idea took root in his mind. If they wanted to throw him away, he'd make sure he didn't go quietly. He'd make sure he wasn't alone. 3 days later, he stood outside Princess Michaela's diplomatic quarters on Station Helix 7. The Zetherian Royal had been touring the outer systems, spreading goodwill and securing trade agreements. Her guards were elite, her schedule publicized, her vulnerability obvious to anyone desperate enough to exploit it. Dominic was that desperate. The abduction was cleaner than it had any right to be. A disrupted power grid, a hijacked shuttle, and a series of precisely timed maneuvers brought them both to the edge of the Void Sector before anyone realized the princess was missing. By the time the alarms sounded, Dominic had already entered the coordinates for his exile. "You're insane," Michaela hissed from her restraints, her luminescent skin flickering with anger. Zetherians were beautiful ethereal beings with features that seemed carved from starlight. "They'll hunt you across the galaxy for this." "They were already hunting me," Dominic replied, piloting the stolen shuttle deeper into the Forbidden Zone. "At least now I'll have company." Company. Her voice dripped with venom. "I'm a hostage, not your companion." Semantics. The Void Sector earned its name. It was a region of space where stars died young, where nebulas swallowed light, and where the Council dumped prisoners they wanted forgotten. Dominic's designated prison was a small, terraformed moon orbiting a dying red giant barely habitable, completely isolated. The shuttle touched down on barren rock. Their new home was a prefabricated facility, 2 rooms, basic life support, and enough rations to last decades. The Council had intended this for 1 person. Now it would house 2. "Let me go," Michaela demanded as Dominic released her restraints. "You've made your point. This is madness. It's survival," he corrected. "You think they'd let me live if I'd come here alone? I'd go mad in 6 months. But you," he gestured at her, "your insurance. As long as I have you, they can't just forget about this place. They'll have to check in, send supplies, maybe even negotiate." Her eyes large and impossibly "You're using me as a bargaining chip. I'm using you as a reason to stay sane." The first weeks were tense. Michaela refused to speak to him, spending her days in silent meditation, her nights plotting escape routes that didn't exist. Dominic maintained the facility, rationed their supplies, and tried not to think about the fact that he'd essentially kidnapped royalty. But isolation has a way of breaking down barriers. It started with practical necessities. The water recycler malfunctioned, and Dominic needed an extra set of hands. Michaela could have refused, could have let them both suffer, but she didn't. She held the panel steady while he rewired the system. "Why did you do it?" she asked one night, her voice cutting through the darkness of their shared quarters. "Why expose the weapons program?" Dominic stared at the ceiling. "Because it was wrong. They were building planet killers, testing them on colony worlds. People died. My people. You sacrificed everything for principle. I sacrificed everything because someone had to." Silence stretched between them, but it felt different now, less hostile, more contemplative. Months passed. The moon's solitude became their shared reality. Dominic taught Michaela about human culture, about Earth's messy history and its desperate climb toward the stars. She taught him about Cytherian philosophy, about the weight of royal duty and the loneliness of always being watched. They discovered they both loved ancient literature. She recited poetry from her homeworld in a language that sounded like crystal chimes. He read her Shakespeare, Twain, and Octavia Butler. They argued about ethics, laughed at each other's jokes, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, became friends. "Do you regret it?" Dominic asked one evening as they watched the red giant's light paint the landscape in blood-orange hues. "Being here, with me," Michaela was quiet for a long moment. I should hate you for what you did, but you were right. About the loneliness." She turned to him, her expression soft. "I've spent my entire life surrounded by people, yet I've never felt less alone than I do here." The communication beacon activated 9 months into their exile. The council's message was brief. Negotiations for Michaela's release were underway. They offered Dominic a full pardon, relocation to a colony world, and immunity from prosecution. He could go home. You should take it, Michaela said, though her voice wavered. You've served your purpose. I'll vouch for your character. Dominic looked at the transmission console, then at the woman who'd somehow become the most important person in his universe. The woman who'd transformed his prison into something resembling home. Counteroffer, he said, typing rapidly. Princess Michaela stays voluntarily. I stay voluntarily. Send better supplies. Establish a research outpost here, and we'll cooperate with your scientific surveys of the region. Dominic, you can't. I was sentenced to exile, he interrupted, meeting her startled gaze. And I captured their princess so I wouldn't be alone. Mission accomplished. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being alone and started being happy. Tears if Cytherians could cry shimmered in her eyes. You're still insane. Probably, he agreed. But I'm not leaving unless you want me to. Michaela smiled then, radiant and genuine. Stay. And so they did. To exiles by choice, finding freedom in the place meant to cage them. The humans, the council would learn, had a peculiar talent for turning punishment into paradise, especially when they refused to face eternity alone.